Hi there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of An Engineer's Guide to Hell Let Loose. In this one, we're looking at the Rudno strong point on the Kursk map from the German perspective. And as you can see on the tactical map, there's kind of, two general ways in, and it usually involves trenches. And it comes through the northwest, and also a push from the east. Without any further ado, we're going to hop onto the map and see what this looks like, but it's going to be pretty much build in the west and maybe a more active defense in the east. So we are looking down at Rudno from the German perspective. Right? Those are the famous windmills, which may or may not be the hard cap. They're not the hard cap this time. It is Yamki, but notice where you're probably not going to have spawns. You're probably not going to have too many spawns forward. You might have some OPs, but Gary placement in front is going to be a bit rough. So most of the spawns for Rudno from the German perspective are likely going to be in the hard cap, unfortunately, or behind it. And we run very close. So right here, we move into a different capable zone. So from there back, even if we lost Rudno, the spawns would still be up. Whereas I think right around that greenhouse is pretty much the dividing line, which also means it's the dividing line for most Soviet OPs and red zone garrisons. You can see they have pretty slim pickings in the backside, but they know where yours are going to be. I would be surprised if the Germans, if Rudno is the point, don't have a garrison or two back in the woods. This is like some of the points that we've covered on Foy. On other maps, they're in a different zone, they're close by, and they allow folks who spawn in cover and concealment to quickly get into where they need to get into. So my recommendation to build west is going to center on building this area between this is the most northwestern trench. You can see that if you lose it, right, they get into it, that is Rudno. It's not that far away. You might have folks in the back buildings. You may not. It's pub play. Who really knows? But it's not hard then to get into these trenches, and you are really into the cookie jar that is that. So I'd want a level 3 barricade back here that allows us to look down that trench. I'd want our bunker here, and probably another level 3 barricade that's angled a bit back here and gives us peaks. This gives us peaks on anybody who's looking for a shortcut out of the trench network that mostly, so if they don't go on the very wide northwest flank, and we're looking at this now from the Soviet perspective, but they're coming from the windmills, right? Those are the windmills, that's where they get in. If they're going to come this way, so they can go around here, they can go up there. This is kind of a path to nowhere until they get to the, unless they're able to get out of this point, this is kind of a nothing, unless they're, again, just going to be able to yeet themselves out of the trenches and get across. And if that's the case, your team probably has bigger problems and you're going to lose regardless of what you do as an engineer. But there are a couple of critical intersections here. So here are two of them at once, right? Once they're in here, I would not be as concerned if they go off to the right. If they go off to the right, they can only exit out this way, and then they're standing in an open field. So that's not really the concern. The concern is that they're able to move left through here, and then they can either move right into Rudno that way, or they move under that little bridge, move over here, and then they're able to get into Rudno down here. So you have another pair of intersections back here that are also key. Again, this one is, you don't really care if they go out that way, but you do care if they go into Rudno here, and then here, it's not quite a straight shot because of how some of this stuff works. It's a bit broken, but there is a path into Rudno on its east side from there. So when you get done with constructions and you have your mines, you want to think about mining those key intersections, and I would do the ones closest to Rudno first. And so that means, right, and you know where you are when you have the little wooden bridges over the trenches. But you know you've gotten close when you see those. So you have an intersection there. You have an intersection there. You have an intersection here. And you have the intersection here. So if you get those mines up, I think that you can certainly inhibit any sort of push if it is coming from windmills. If you're worried about armor, you do have your anti-tank mines and your anti-tank obstacles, and it's so wide open, it's really hard to tell. But if you're worried about them just pushing straight down the road, then you just mix up obstacles with mines, obstacles with mines. You want to spread them out so that they can't get all your mines in 1 or 2 shots. But that would be how I would deal with a push from the north. If you want to hedge that they'll also push from the east, which is tempting, then I think your key piece of ground is right here. And with this one, even if you did the other construction, you would still have 2 barricades left. And so you could build one facing out that way and the other along with it facing out that way. And what you're doing here is shooting anybody who's looking, or setting others up to shoot anyone who's looking for a shortcut out of those trenches. And if you didn't use up all your anti-personnel mines over there, you can always place them back here. Something I haven't talked about too much in this one is how you might cooperate with armor. Armor can shut down a whole lot, particularly against the Soviets, unless they have some more advanced AT players. But German armor could sit here, even behind those barricades, with or without them, and they could lock down most things that were north and east that came out of a trench. The concern is that a satchel player would come up behind them through these trenches and get them. You could incentivize the tank to do that by putting a repair station, maybe right here, and then actively defending their backside or placing AP mines near the exits or entrances or in any of the shady parts of those trenches. A final build you might want to think about. So we are here again west of Rudno in this little dugout. You can see we're pretty close to the edge of the map. This is not a terrible place for a garrison. It's in the soft cap. It's far enough away from the hard cap that it's unlikely to attract attention. It's in a bit of cover and concealment. The downside is that in order to get to the hard cap, folks got to cover a lot of open ground. But if you elected to not build a barricade or 2 elsewhere and put them here, you could. You could also pair it with a vehicle repair station. And if you could incentivize friendly armor to come and sit here, right, they can lock everything on the west side that looks north into the windmills. And so this whole part of the map would be at the mercy of that armor. And you would also have some soft recon from the garrison that's here. You'd have spawns. It's just that they're a bit far away from, probably a bit too far away from the hard cap, and that's why I'd prefer to concentrate more here and on that eastern push. Anyways, those are some thoughts about what you might do as the construction-oriented engineer if you find yourself defending Rudno as the Germans.